Growing up, I thought my mom was the weakest woman I knew. My dad wasn't a monster in public. To everyone else, he was a charming man, helpful, respected in the community, always laughing a little too loud. But at home, he was something else. He didn't hit her, not in the way people imagine. But the way he controlled her, the way he snapped at her, made her shrink, cut her off mid-sentence, insulted her in jokes, yelled over the smallest things. It was exhausting. Oppressive. He made her feel small, and somehow, she let him. I used to watch her flinch when he walked in. He'd complain the food was too salty. That she was too quiet. That she wasn't keeping herself like other women. That the house wasn't clean enough even when it sparkled. And every time, she'd nod like a scolded child and whisper, "It's okay." It wasn't okay. It was never okay. She never raised her voice. Never fought back. Never slammed a door. I'd wait hoping, praying for her to finally snap. To stand up for herself. To scream. To throw a plate. To leave. But she never did. And slowly, something in me started to turn. I wasn't just sad for her anymore. I was angry. Angry that she stayed. I'd hear my friends at school talk about how their moms left abusive dads, how they took their kids and ran, how they started over bruised but brave. And then I'd come home to my mom, hunched over a pot of soup, acting like this was normal. Like love was supposed to be silent suffering. I began to resent her. I'd snap at her too, sometimes not with the cruelty of my dad, but with the coldness of someone who had already judged her and found her guilty. Guilty of being weak. Of being spineless. Of letting a man walk all over her and drag her kids through it, too. I remember one night in particular. I was about 17. My dad had gone off about something ridiculous, some stain on his shirt or maybe the remote not working, I don't even remember. She stood there, like always, saying nothing. And when he left the room, I turned to her and said, "Why do you let him treat you like that?" She just looked at me, eyes tired, soft, and said, "You'll understand when you're older." I didn't respond. But in my head, I screamed. No. I won't. I'll never be like you. I'll never stay with a man like him. I'll never let someone turn me into a ghost in my own house. And when I finally left for university, I didn't look back. I told myself I was free, not just from my dad, but from becoming her. Time moved on, and so did I, or at least, that's what I told myself. After I left for college, I stopped going home unless I had to. I'd call once in a while, birthdays, holidays, that sort of thing. But even those calls were short. Surface level. How's school? I'm fine. How's your father? Still him. Okay. Love you. Sometimes I'd hang up and feel hollow. Other times, just numb. I never said it out loud, but I blamed her more than I blamed him. I hated that about myself, but it was true. I told myself. She had choices. She could have left. She could have saved us. But instead, she stayed. She played peacekeeper. And she let him keep being the storm. After graduation, I got a job out of state. I didn't tell them until I was already gone. When she called to say she missed me, I kept the conversation short. I loved her somewhere deep down, I did, but I couldn't look at her without feeling a strange mix of anger and sadness. Then one day, she got sick. It started slow. A few missed calls. Then a text from a cousin. "Have you spoken to your mom? She's been in and out of the hospital." The next time I called, her voice was weaker. But still soft. Still saying I'm okay. She wasn't. 6 months later, she was gone. I didn't cry when I got the call. I didn't cry at the funeral either. I sat stiff in the front row, staring at the casket while people got up to speak about what an amazing woman she was. She was the strongest woman I ever met, one aunt said, dabbing her eyes. She had the biggest heart, another whispered. She endured so much. Such a blessing. Such grace. And I sat there thinking. Who are you all talking about? Because that's not the woman I knew. The woman I knew folded into herself like paper. The woman I knew let life happen to her. The woman I knew stayed when she should have run. After the burial, I stayed behind for a few days to help clean out the house. My father was cold and distant, no surprise there. He asked nothing about my life, said nothing about hers. Just sat in the living room watching the news like his wife of 30 years hadn't just been buried. Her room smelled like old talcum powder and prayers. The bed was neatly made. Her closet still filled with old wrappers and scarves, folded perfectly. And that's when I found a worn-out shoebox tucked beneath her dresses. I almost didn't open it. But I did. Inside were letters, dozens of them. Some yellowed with age, others newer. All addressed to someone. Some to my father. Some to me. Some to no one at all. And none of them had ever been sent. The first letter I picked up was dated 2 years after I was born. It started simply, "I don't know who I'm writing to. I just need to feel like someone is listening." And then it unfolded like a wound that had been bleeding in silence for years. There were dozens of them. Some folded neatly, others crumpled and tear-stained. Some in envelopes, others scribbled on the backs of old shopping lists, prayer bulletins, even school reports. Letters to my dad. Letters to me. Letters to no one. Letters she never had the courage to send, or maybe letters she wrote knowing no one would understand. In them, she confessed things I never imagined. She wrote about how she almost left once, packed our things while he was at work, called a friend in the next town, made a plan. But then her brother called and told her she was selfish. That leaving a man like my father would disgrace the family. She wrote about how terrified she was that he'd take me from her if she left. That he had once threatened, if you ever run, you'll never see your child again. That he'd already spoken to a lawyer. She wrote about the night he threw a plate near her head, and how she cleaned up the broken pieces in silence while I slept in the next room. She wrote about how she stayed awake some nights, praying, asking God to let her die in her sleep, not because she didn't love me, but because she didn't know how to protect both of us. She wrote about her dreams of working, of starting a tailoring business. But my dad wouldn't let her. Said her place was in the home. Said he didn't want other men watching her measure fabric. She wrote about her shame. Not just in staying, but in how much she hated herself for it. In one letter, she said, "My child will hate me for this one day. I can see it in their eyes already. I just hope. Maybe one day, they'll understand that I stayed not because I was weak but because I didn't know how to leave without losing them." I read those letters until my eyes blurred. Until the pages became waves. Until the pain I'd buried for years unraveled into something I didn't know how to name. Because for the first time I saw her. Not as the quiet woman in the corner of the kitchen, but as a woman who had been screaming in silence for decades. And then I saw it, one letter, newer than the rest. Folded carefully. My name written across the front in shaky handwriting. A letter just for me. My hand shook as I opened the letter with my name on it. The paper was newer. The ink still sharp. Dated just 3 weeks before she passed. It started simply. My baby. Not my name. Not dear daughter or dear child. Just. My baby. Like she was still holding me in her heart the way she once held me in her arms. If you're reading this, then I'm gone. And there are things I never got to say. Things I couldn't say. I swallowed hard and kept reading. She apologized. Over and over again. She said she was sorry for seeming weak. For not being the kind of mother I needed. For letting me grow up in a house where silence became safety. For every time she stood still when I needed her to move. For every time she said it's okay when it wasn't. I saw the way you looked at me, she wrote. Like I disappointed you. Like you were ashamed of me. And the truth is I understood. I hated myself too. I couldn't breathe. She wasn't trying to justify it. She wasn't defending him. She was just telling the truth, her truth. The truth I had refused to see. I didn't want you to become me. That's what I told myself every time I stayed. Every time I kept quiet. If I could just get you to grow up, get you out, keep you from breaking the way I broke. Then maybe it would be worth it. I blinked through tears, the words blurring into soft shadows on the page. You were everything I wanted to be. Strong. Brave. Unapologetic. I didn't raise you to be like me. I raised you to survive me. That was the line that broke me. That shattered every wall I'd built to protect myself from feeling anything for the woman I had once dismissed as weak. I cried. For the first time since the funeral. I cried. Ugly, shaking, soul-deep sobs that came from a place I didn't know existed. Because I finally understood. She hadn't failed me. She had fought for me in the only way she knew how, by enduring. She bore the brunt of his storms so I could grow up and escape the thunder. And I had judged her without ever knowing the cost of her silence. I spent years resenting her. Judging her. Misunderstanding her silence. I thought she stayed because she was scared. I thought she stayed because she had no backbone. I thought she stayed because she didn't love herself enough. But now I know she stayed because she loved me too much to leave. She fought in ways I never understood as a child. Quiet wars. Invisible bruises. 1,000 sacrifices no one ever saw, because she didn't do it for applause, she did it so I could live a life she was never allowed to dream of. The strength I always thought she lacked was the very reason I became strong. She shielded me from things I never noticed. She endured storms I was too young to name. And when I left, she never stopped loving me even when my silence became another kind of storm. I went back to her grave on the last day of my stay. The cemetery was quiet, just the sound of birds and the wind brushing over the grass. I knelt by her headstone and placed the letters back into the earth, just beneath the stone that bears her name. Not because I wanted to bury her secrets, but because I wanted her truth to rest beside her where it belonged. And before I stood up, I whispered the words I wish I had said sooner. You weren't weak, Mama. You were the strongest person I never really saw. Until now.